Today we're going to be taking a look at Hinduism.
Okay.
And we've got some really fascinating material to go through. We've got some official documentation from the government of India.
Right.
But we also have some publications from the Divine Life Society.
Okay.
So we've got kind of a multifaceted view into this very ancient faith.
Interesting.
And one of the things that struck me when I was reading through the material, how do we even define Hinduism? But one of the first things that really jumped out at me was the word Hindu itself and how it's so much more than just a religious label.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like it's almost like a key to understanding an entire civilization.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because one of the sources points out that the word Hindu, it's not just a religious label. It has geographical, national, and even racial significance.
Really?
And they're all tied in with the entire history of India.
That's amazing. So, how do we even begin to define Hinduism then?
Yeah.
It makes it unique among the world's religions.
Yeah, so one of the sources really emphasizes that there's freedom.
Okay.
That's inherent in Hinduism. And it says that, unlike some other religions, Hinduism doesn't say that it's the only path to liberation or, final emancipation, as they call it.
Okay.
It's more about the ultimate goal.
Oh, interesting.
Rather than, having a strict set of rules.
So it's less about dogma and more about individual journeys then.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So to understand these journeys, we should look at the Hindu scriptures.
Okay.
And I think the best place to start would be the Vedas.
Yeah, the Vedas, they're like this ancient collection of wisdom, right?
Yes.
And I know they're divided into sections on rituals and worship and the pursuit of ultimate knowledge, but I think for a lot of people it's kind of like, oh yeah, the Vedas,
right.
What's in there?
Well, they're really interesting. So each section is categorized. So the first one is called a Karma Kanda, and that one focuses on rituals.
Okay.
And then there's the Upasana Kanda, which deals with worship. And then the Jnana Kanda, which is dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge.
So even within the Vedas, we've got a structure.
Yes.
And different paths, to explore.
Absolutely.
I know the Rig Veda is considered the oldest and most revered.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, one of the sources described it as the Great Indian Bible.
Oh, wow.
And it's considered a treasure trove of profound truths about existence.
It seems like everything in Hinduism is very multi-layered.
It is.
And speaking of layers, there's this whole concept of dharma. I know some people think of that as almost synonymous with religion, but it seems to be much deeper than that.
It is. It's about living a life
Okay.
that promotes well-being and truth and ethical conduct.
Okay.
And one of the sources defines it beautifully as that which brings well-being to man.
So it's about aligning your actions with a higher purpose.
Exactly.
And that makes me think of, the concepts of right and wrong.
Right.
How does Hinduism approach morality within this framework of dharma?
So it's not quite as simple as, black and white.
Okay.
The sources point out that dharma isn't static.
Okay.
And that it evolves with the yugas, the different eras of time. And so what's considered right can actually change and vary based on the context.
So it's not about following like a fixed set of rules, but more about adapting to the needs of the time.
Precisely. So, for example, the source gives a couple of examples.
Okay.
It says that, killing an enemy might be right for a Kshatriya king.
A warrior.
Yeah, a warrior. But it's not right for a Brahmin.
Like a priest.
A priest or scholar or a sannyasin, which is someone who has renounced worldly life. And then they even say that even truthfulness can be flexible.
Oh, wow.
And that there are situations where speaking an untruth might be acceptable to save a life.
So it's a very nuanced view of morality.
It is.
Very different from like a strict rule book.
Right.
And that reminds me a lot of the 4 ashramas, which are the stages of life in Hinduism.
Okay.
It's like a roadmap for personal and spiritual evolution.
Yeah. And the ashramas provide a framework for a life that's dedicated to self-realization. So it starts with brahmacharya, which is the student phase, and it's dedicated to learning and discipline.
Okay.
And then comes grihastha, the householder stage, which is focused on family and responsibilities.
And then after that?
After that comes vanaprastha, the hermit stage.
The hermit stage.
Which is for introspection and detachment. And finally, sannyasa, the renunciation stage, where one seeks spiritual liberation.
It's a beautiful concept. I mean, let's be real. Not many of us are going to head off to the forest and live as hermits these days.
It's true.
But I guess the underlying principle is still very relevant.
Yeah, I think so. It's about, recognizing the different phases that we go through in life.
Okay.
And the potential for spiritual growth in each phase. So, we might not literally become hermits.
Right.
But we can cultivate that spirit of introspection and detachment as we mature.
It's about applying these ancient ideals
Yes.
to our modern lives. And speaking of ancient, let's dive into the world of Hindu philosophy.
Okay.
We've got 6 schools of thought to explore, each with its own unique perspective on reality and the self.
It's fascinating that, Hinduism embraces this diversity of thought.
Yeah.
And one source says that, this variety is necessary because people have different temperaments and capacities.
That makes sense.
And so, there's no one-size-fits-all
Yeah.
approach to understand the universe and our place in it.
Very inclusive.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with Nyaya,
Okay.
the school that emphasizes logic and reason?
It's almost like a scientific approach to spirituality.
Yeah.
So Nyaya focuses on proving the existence of God and understanding reality through observation and inference.
Yeah.
So it's about applying rigorous logic to spiritual questions.
Fascinating. And then we have Sankhya, which delves into the duality of consciousness and matter.
Right.
And I know this one introduces the concept of the 3 gunas that influence our very nature.
Yes. Sankhya explores the interplay of Purusha, which is the pure consciousness or the self,
Okay.
and then Prakriti, which is the material world,
Hmm.
and the 3 gunas, which are sattva, rajas, and tamas, represent different qualities
Okay.
that shape our thoughts and actions and destinies.
Wow.
So sattva is associated with purity, knowledge, and harmony.
Okay.
Rajas is all about passion, activity, and restlessness.
Mm.
And then tamas represents inertia, ignorance, and darkness.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Really makes you think about, the forces that shape our personalities and our choices.
It does.
But what about Vedanta? Arguably the most well-known school of Hindu philosophy.
So Vedanta focuses on Brahman,
Okay.
which is the ultimate reality, the underlying principle of all existence.
Okay.
And there are different interpretations within Vedanta, but they all revolve around understanding Brahman and the relationship between the individual self and the ultimate reality.
So connecting with the source of all things. And within Vedanta, we have some branches like Vistishtadvaita and Suttadvaita,
Yes.
each with its own unique take on the nature of Brahman and the self.
Yes.
So Vistishtadvaita, that's all about qualified non-dualism, right?
It is.
That sounds very complex.
It is, but it's a beautiful concept.
Okay.
So this branch suggests that while the individual self and Brahman are ultimately one, the individual soul retains its unique identity, even in that union with the divine. So think of it like drops of water merging into the ocean. They become part of that vastness, but they still exist as individual drops.
So there's a balance between unity and individuality.
Precisely.
And then how is Suttadvaita, which is the pure monism path, different from that?
So Suttadvaita takes a more radical approach.
Okay.
And it views the world as a real manifestation of Brahman, not an illusion.
Oh, wow.
And it emphasizes bhakti, or devotion, as the path to liberation.
So in this school of thought, the world is not separate from the divine, but an expression of it.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget Saiva Siddhanta, the school that focuses on Lord Shiva as the supreme reality.
Yes, and this one emphasizes the role of Sakti, which is divine energy in creation. And it highlights the path of realizing Shiva as the ultimate truth. And it's a tradition that's very rich in symbolism and ritual practices.
So we've got these 6 schools of philosophy painting a very multifaceted picture of reality.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible how Hinduism encompasses such a wide spectrum of thought.
It is.
But what about some of the more intriguing concepts like avatars and karma? I mean, those are things that have seeped into popular culture.
Oh, they have. So avatars are divine incarnations, like Lord Krishna and Lord Rama. They're central to Hindu mythology and belief. And they represent the descent of the divine into the world to restore balance and guide humanity.
I've always been fascinated by the stories of Krishna and Rama. They're like the original superheroes.
They are.
Full of wisdom and adventure.
Absolutely.
And karma. Well, everybody seems to have heard of karma.
They do.
These days.
But in Hinduism, it's more than just a cosmic payback system. It's about action and its consequences. And it's a force that shapes our destinies over multiple lifetimes.
So it's connected to reincarnation.
Yes.
The cyclical journey of birth, death, and rebirth.
Absolutely. And reincarnation fueled by karma
Okay.
offers souls the opportunity to evolve and learn and ultimately break free from the cycle of suffering.
Wow.
It's a profound concept that gives meaning to our actions and choices.
It's like a cosmic tapestry where every thread is connected.
I like that.
And speaking of tapestry, Hinduism is so rich in rituals and practices.
It is.
And each one seems to be woven with this deep symbolism and meaning.
And they're not just empty ceremonies. They're ways to connect with the divine and to sanctify life.
Okay.
And to experience the sacred in those everyday moments.
Tell me about Sanya, the daily ritual that's performed at dawn, noon, and dusk.
Okay, so Santya is a practice of prayers and meditation.
Okay.
And it's a way to align oneself with the natural rhythms of the day.
Okay.
So it's about, taking a pause,
Okay.
connecting with the divine, purifying the mind and the heart.
It's like hitting a spiritual reset button 3 times a day.
I like that.
And what about the samskaras, these ceremonies that are performed throughout a person's life?
So the samskaras are really interesting. They mark significant transitions from birth to marriage to death.
Okay.
And they're sacred rites that are designed to purify the individual and invoke divine blessings.
Okay.
And to acknowledge the spiritual dimension of these life passages.
It's incredible how Hinduism integrates spirituality.
It does.
Into every stage of life.
It really does.
What about the Panchamahayajanas, the 5 daily sacrifices?
Right. So these sacrifices aren't about literal offerings. They're actually 5 different ways to express gratitude.
Okay.
And to acknowledge our interconnectedness with the universe.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. One of them is Buddha Yagna,
Okay.
which is the offering of food to animals.
Okay.
And it's a simple act that recognizes our dependence on all creatures. And it fosters a sense of compassion.
Okay.
And then there's Manushya Yajna,
Okay.
which is offering food to the needy.
So it's about extending our care
Yes.
to fellow human beings,
Totally.
recognizing our shared humanity.
Exactly.
Those are beautiful expressions of Dharma,
Yes.
acting for the well-being of all.
Yes.
And then there's Shraddha, the ritual offerings to ancestors.
Yes.
That's a very touching tradition.
It is. It honors our lineage.
Okay.
And it acknowledges the impact that our ancestors have had on our lives.
Mm.
And so it's a way to express gratitude and to seek their blessings.
Okay.
And to remember their contributions.
It's a beautiful reminder that we're part of something larger than ourselves,
Yeah.
connected to generations past and future.
It is.
This is so much more than just a religion. It's like a whole worldview, a way of life.
It is. And we haven't even talked about Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion.
Oh, right.
Or yoga in general, with all of its different forms and techniques for achieving union with the divine.
Oh.
There's so much more to explore.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface.
We have.
But for now, let's take a break and we'll come back and delve even deeper into the fascinating world of Hinduism.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Hinduism. As we continue to explore, I'm really struck by how much emphasis there is on connecting with the divine through tangible experiences.
Yeah.
Not just abstract beliefs. It's a very embodied faith.
It is. And, one of the ways that Hinduism brings these concepts to life is through its mythology.
Right.
We've got epic tales, cosmic battles, divine beings who walk among humans.
Yeah.
It's a world of wonder and symbolism.
Oh, absolutely. I've always been fascinated by Hindu mythology, especially those stories of Krishna and Rama. But are they just entertaining stories, or is there something deeper going on?
Oh, there's always a deeper layer in Hinduism. One of the sources points out that mythology is concretized philosophy. It's a way to make complex ideas accessible through these narratives, like teaching profound truths through stories that capture the imagination.
So it's like sneaking in the wisdom through entertainment.
Exactly, yeah. And Hindu mythology is full of captivating tales.
Right.
Like the epic battles in the Mahabharata, the playful wisdom of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavata Purana, and of course the inspiring journey of Lord Rama in the Ramayana.
Yeah.
These stories offer insights into human nature, morality, the struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, it's like those original superhero sagas, but with a spiritual dimension.
Right.
But how much of Hindu mythology is actual history versus pure myth?
Well, one of the sources acknowledged that it's often hard to separate the two.
Right.
Mythology and history are intertwined.
Okay.
It can be really challenging to determine what's factual and what's symbolic. But ultimately, the focus is on the lessons and the insights these stories offer rather than on their literal truth.
So it's about the wisdom embedded in those narratives, not necessarily historical accuracy.
Exactly. So, for example, the concept of avatars.
Right.
Those divine descents to Earth.
Yeah.
Some people might consider that mythology.
Okay.
But for Hindus, it's a profound expression of the divine's intervention in human affairs.
It's about faith and belief that a higher power can interact with our world. It reminds me of, those superhero movies where a god or a powerful being comes down to help humanity.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one source emphasized that studying Hindu mythology can offer these valuable object lessons.
Okay.
So the stories of Rama, Krishna, Sita, and Hanuman, they teach about courage, devotion, duty, and the triumph of good over evil. And they provide role models and ethical guidance for navigating life's challenges.
They're not just entertainment. They're meant to inspire and teach.
Exactly. And speaking of teaching, I wanted to kind of revisit those key symbols in Hinduism. And one that I thought was really interesting is the tilaka.
Okay, the tilaka, that mark on the forehead.
Right. We talked about its connection to the third eye and spiritual awakening.
Uh-huh.
But one of the sources talked about some practical applications.
Oh, really? Okay.
That I thought were really fascinating. So it explains that applying tilaka, especially with sandalwood paste, can actually have this cooling effect, which is really helpful during meditation.
So it's not just symbolic, but it also serves a practical purpose in spiritual practice.
It's like aromatherapy for meditation.
Yeah.
And, the placement of the tilaka at the Ajna chakra.
Right, between the eyebrows.
Yes, is significant. It's considered the seat of intuition and inner wisdom.
Like a physical reminder to turn your attention inward.
Exactly. And then we talked about prasada, the food that's offered to the deity.
Right, and how consuming prasada is believed to carry those divine blessings and have that transformative power.
Yes, exactly. But one of the sources highlights the importance of the devotee's mental state when offering that food.
Oh, okay.
The sincerity and devotion that's poured into the offering are believed to imbue the food with that spiritual energy.
So it's almost like a transfer of positive energy through the act of offering and devotion.
Yeah. And then consuming the prasada is a way to receive that divine grace and become connected to the divine through the simple act of eating.
It's like taking in a bit of the divine essence. And then the linga.
Yes.
The symbol of Lord Shiva. We talked about its representation of the formless and infinite, but I'm curious about its physical form.
Right. Well, there are various forms of the linga,
okay,
each with its symbolism. But one that really stood out to me was the Sphataka linga. It's a linga made of quartz crystal.
You mentioned that. And what makes the quartz so special?
Well, the Sphataka linga is unique because it has no inherent color. It takes on the color of whatever it's in contact with.
That's fascinating.
It is.
It's like a chameleon of sacred symbols.
It's a great way to put it.
What does that symbolize?
It represents the Nirguna Brahman.
Okay.
The attributeless supreme self. The ultimate reality beyond form and qualities.
Okay.
Just as the Sphataka linga reflects its surroundings, the Nirguna Brahman is thought to be beyond attributes, beyond qualities, taking on different forms depending on the context.
That's a profound idea.
It is.
It's like a mirror reflecting the ultimate reality, which is constantly changing and evolving.
That's a beautiful analogy. And for a devotee, the linga, regardless of its form, is a tangible symbol of Lord Shiva, a focus for prayer and meditation. And one source even describes how the linga can evoke these intense emotions in devotees, leading to profound spiritual experiences.
It's like a bridge between the physical and the divine, something you can see and touch, but it connects you to this higher realm.
Exactly. And as we've been exploring these various aspects of Hinduism, the myths, the symbols, the rituals, we see how they all work together to create this rich tapestry of spiritual expression. It's a faith that engages all the senses, the mind, and the heart.
It's not just about believing, it's about experiencing.
Exactly. And that experience extends beyond just the individual. Hinduism also emphasizes the importance of living a meaningful and ethical life, contributing to society, and recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings.
It's about bringing those spiritual insights into the world and making a positive impact.
Precisely. And in our final part of this deep dive, we'll explore the social and ethical dimensions of Hinduism, delving into concepts like unity and service and the importance of living a virtuous life.
I can't wait. This deep dive is proving to be much more enlightening than I ever imagined. Welcome back to our deep dive into the heart of Hinduism.
One thing that's really striking me is how much emphasis there is on unity, both in a spiritual sense and in a social sense. It's like a thread that runs through everything. Yeah, for sure. One source I was reading really emphasized that consolidation of people is an imperative need of the hour. It was talking about how division weakens and unity strengthens.
That's true. And it seems to really resonate with that whole concept of dharma.
Yeah.
That commitment to well-being, to acting in a way that benefits not just ourselves, but the whole.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to humans either.
Yeah.
Like, remember the Panchamahayajanas we were talking about? The 5 daily sacrifices. One of those is Buddha Yajna.
The offering of food to animals.
Right. It's recognizing our interdependence with all creatures.
It reminds me of that saying, we're all connected in the web of life. But how do we, with all this talk of unity, how do we translate that into practical action in our everyday lives?
Well, one source talked about the importance of education.
Okay.
And called for schools and colleges that instill values like truthfulness, righteousness, self-knowledge.
Right.
Saying these are the foundations of a harmonious society.
It's like, thinking about the long game, nurturing individuals who are equipped to contribute to the collective good, not just focused on their own success.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just, book smarts too.
Right.
Another source highlighted the importance of developing character through duty and discipline. How each individual should carry out their responsibilities with integrity.
So it's that understanding that our actions have an impact on the whole, that even small choices can ripple outwards and affect others.
Yeah, it all ties back into karma too, right? Our choices have consequences.
Yeah.
And this source went on to really advocate for a life of action and endurance. Talking about physical strength and self-control and simple living as ways to build resilience and character.
It's a very different message than we often hear these days.
Yeah.
There's so much emphasis on comfort.
Right.
Instant gratification.
It is different. But there's something kind of refreshing about it too.
Yeah, I agree.
Like this call to embrace a life of purpose and discipline, to strive for something greater than ourselves. It makes me think about the ashramas again.
Right.
Those stages of life.
Yeah.
Dedicated to spiritual growth through service and self-realization.
Yeah. It's a framework for living a life that's not just about personal gain.
Yeah.
But about contributing to something larger.
Yeah. And that includes contributing to society,
Okay.
Not just taking from it. Think about that Manushya Yajna again.
The offering to the needy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a concrete way to put those principles of unity and dharma into practice.
It's not just an abstract ideal. It's about actually living it.
Yeah. And that can be tough.
I'm sure it can.
There was one quote that really stood out to me.
Okay.
It urged individuals to abandon all petty differences and unite their minds, hearts, and souls for the solidarity and the well-being of the nation and the world.
It's easy to agree with that in theory, but actually putting it into practice in a world full of conflict and division, that's the real challenge.
It is. And another source offered some guidance on how to approach that challenge.
Okay.
It suggested that those who want to truly serve their religion should cultivate virtues like courage and mercy, tolerance, and humility. It's about leading by example, embodying those values we want to see in the world.
Recognizing that true strength comes from compassion and understanding.
Yes.
Not from trying to force our views on others.
And, I think it all circles back to that idea of connecting with that spark of the divine within each of us. That Brahman that unites us all. That's where our capacity for love and service and unity comes from.
Wow. This has been an incredible journey. We've explored so much, from the ancient scriptures and philosophies to the rituals and symbols that bring those ideas to life.
We have.
It's a faith that's both ancient and incredibly relevant to the challenges we face today.
I agree. And, for our listeners, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the richness and depth of Hinduism.
We've only just scratched the surface, but hopefully this has sparked some curiosity to learn more.
Absolutely.
Hinduism is like an ocean. There's always more to discover, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep delving deeper into this ancient and ever-evolving faith